Okay, so we are going to talk about fairness in the classroom, and this is a great article to use as our guide. It is one that was printed in a publication for the graduate school at the University of Nebraska. And it was really great because it points out that the perceived fairness in the classroom is almost as important as your rules and policies. So let's take a look at it. Okay, general view of students. Okay, and so it's interesting that that Rita Rothenbaum started with this. And she makes a distinction between two types of fairness: procedural fairness and interactional fairness. And of course, procedural fairness would be things like grading policies and that type of thing, maybe attendance policies and so forth, tardy policies. But she says almost more importantly to the students were interactional fairness. And these things encompass impartiality, respect, concern for students' integrity, and propriety. And so they go along in the article and talk about each one of these individually. Okay, impartiality. Okay, students expect an instructor to treat everyone in the class equally. And so this is really, really hard to do. I've taught for 20 years, and there are just some students that you tend to get along with a little bit better than others. And maybe those students meet your personality quirks and kind of are like you. We tend to like people that are like us. And so it's sometimes more difficult to not gravitate or give more attention to certain students than others, but you really have to guard against that because it affects the way students learn. Sometimes a student will care more about their relationship with you in the classroom than they do the subject or even their grade. And so that's really, really important. It says here, to avoid giving the impression of partiality, carefully monitor your behavior and interactions with all students. And this also applies to how you let students, certain students, dominate the classroom. In high school, which I taught, you have some kids that just really have a strong personality, and they're always want to respond to questions and dominate what goes on. But you need to be aware that the other kids in the classroom may perceive that as you being partial to that student. And so you should try to monitor and tap down that behavior somewhat in a very respectful way, of course, and get everybody involved in asking questions. One of the things that I used to do is I would have on their seating chart, I'd make a new seating chart every day with their picture, and I would check off their name if they asked a question, and if you asked for raising hands, you wouldn't call on the kids that already had a chance to ask a question. And sometimes you wouldn't get to everybody in the day, and so I would carry that chart over to the next day. That's just a little strategy that you might use. Hey guys, sorry to interrupt, but I got an important question for you. Do you have a special skill or talent that you need to share with the world? Maybe you're an excellent photographer, or maybe you're an excellent woodworker, or crafter, or cook. There are any number of things that people do every day and really enjoy and do well that they need to share with others. And so let the good people at Teachable lead you through the process of designing your own online course. It's really enjoyable, plus you can make some extra money, and I've included a link down below. Maybe your special talent is commenting on videos and blogs. And so there is a place called paid online writing jobs. And I've included a post down below where you can make money per hour reviewing and writing for others. And so this is a real cool site as well. Maybe you got that back to school blues and you're dreading going out to the stores to buy school supplies for your students. And I'm going to encourage you this year to do a lot of your shopping online. One thing, you don't have to buy from depleted store shelves. You can always pick exactly what you want and find exactly what you need. So I'll provide a Walmart link down below where you can go and shop for your school supplies. Now, when you click on an affiliate link of mine, it won't ever cost you anything extra, but I'll get a small percentage of the sale that will help me create more content for you. So hopefully you're enjoying the podcast, and we'll get right back to it. Thanks. Respect. Respect involves teaching students politely. Ridiculing a student or calling a student stupid is inappropriate in all circumstances. And so, that's just a no-brainer. But I think sometimes it's really hard to give the kind of respect if you get frustrated. Let's say somebody asks the same question several times in a row, or you know that they're not paying attention and they ask something that you've just covered. And so just be polite. Realize that kids, their attention spans are very small. In fact, it used to be the 20-minute rule that you never went more than 20 minutes giving direct instruction. But I've been reading a book called Brain Rules, and you'll apologize if I reach forward here and take a look at this thing. It's by John Medina, and he goes by the 10-minute rule, and he explains why, and he has some really good strategies on how to use neurology and the science of neurology to figure out how to instruct students. Okay, so instructor who is perceived as impatient or demanding, either directly through comments or directly through tone or voice, facial expressions, or posture, loses students' respect. And so this is one of those things that I really thought a lot about myself, is I tended to be a demanding teacher and I expected a lot of my students. But in that, I think I was also, and I hope I was also very careful not to uh, not to direct that directly at a student in front of other kids. And so if you need to talk to a student about their performance, it's always best to do it privately. Asking them questions about their activities. I used to make a seating chart, and I would write a little something about each student on the seating chart. I'd have a survey at the beginning of the year, hobbies, interests, where they worked, if they worked, brothers, sisters, and so forth. So that's a good way of doing that. Um, if students have concerns about a grade or a procedure in class, it's always best to discuss that with them privately. If they make a public statement or ask about something, if it's a general procedural thing that the whole class needs to be aware of, it's a good time to go ahead and explain that and explain your reasoning for it if the student has an objection. But if it is a matter of maybe a mistake that you made in grading their paper, or they feel like you've made a mistake, those types of things are always better handled in private. Propriety means acting in a socially acceptable manner that does not offend students' sensibilities. All right, and it gives some examples here of telling off-colored stories, or maybe presenting a film or something that they might find offensive. And we always had a very strict video or film policy in our school that had to be approved by the principal. And that was frustrating at times how strict they were with that, because there were some really good movies that I wanted to show that maybe had a little bit of inappropriate language or something like that, and shows that had really good science in them. But I think it's always important to warn students when they're going to be watching something that may offend them, and always watch your conduct and not tell a story or something that might offend somebody. Privacy here, it says, and this is dictated by law. There's FERPA policies that demand that you not share any personal information about students, as well as there's laws involving the last part of this about teacher-student relationships and how inappropriate those can be. Conclusion, okay? Ethical issues are often seen in terms of outright abuse of power or privilege. However, where fairness is concerned, many behaviors that teachers may unthinkingly exhibit on a day-to-day basis, such as sharing personal information about their weekend activities or making changes in course content and procedures during the semester, may be perceived quite differently by students. All right, and I just have a kind of a general thing to say here. If you're up talking, getting off topic about things that are not in your subject matter, if a student is really struggling in your class, they're going to be frustrated with that, because they would say, he's not teaching the class. I really need him to zero in and help me understand things. And he's talking about his golf game, or he's talking about maybe his motorcycle, or she's talking about her boyfriend, or she's talking about her craft fair. And so you have to be careful. A certain amount of that, maybe when you're first talking to kids about what's going on in their lives, might be okay. You have to be really careful with that, though, because students will ask you some very personal questions about your personal life, and those should be off limits. Okay. So it says here, it's important to carefully monitor one's behavior and policies to ensure that they are not only in fact fair, but are perceived to be fair by their students. And so those are just some general guidelines. I thought the article was really good. What do you think? What do you think that I didn't cover about ethical behavior in the classroom? And do you disagree with any of these things? Be interested in knowing your opinion. Hopefully you found this valuable to you. Please let us know. Thanks.